Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 45th episode of the Spiritual Brainstorm. In the last video, I was speaking about the brutality and the protests and all the manifesting going on in the world. And I explored two main concepts in there as a sort of parentheses, the concept of love and fear. And I wanted to re-explore these because I think they're really essential to understand how we should deal with them, how we should understand them, how we should deal with them, and what we're kind of asked to do in these new times where we're supposed to ascend into 5D, so-called 5D. So in the previous video, I basically explained very quickly that love is that which attracts, brings together. Fear is that which repulses or separates, brings together. And these are the two primal sort of magnetic forces. One which attracts, which means that if everything is love, there is no experience because everything is one, quite simply, because every part sort of melts in every other part. Everything loves everything else. Everything is attracted to everything else. Therefore, there is nothing outside. There's no possible experience with anything on the outside because everything is inside. Everything is like this huge unified ocean, which is the ultimate reality. But fear and ego are kind of illusions where you wrap fear around certain part of this, of God or of totality, of infinity, and then that little dot, that little droplet, identifies itself as separated from the ocean. So fear is that which divides. So fear is that which expands and divides. It's like the Big Bang. Big Bang, you could even describe as the Big Bang as God being afraid of himself, him, herself, itself. And then, of course, exploded into plenty of different parts. And again, if you have pure fear, though, if you have only fear, then there's also no experience because everything is so separated, so repulses so much everything else that it cannot interact with anything else. It's too far away. So imagine if you were afraid of everything that was around you except yourself. You were afraid of the floor, you were afraid of the window, the blue sky, the trees, absolutely everything. Then it's almost as if you would try to push all of that away and you'd find yourself in this bubble of void where there would only be you. And that's where the extremes, as I said, are. One is that once you're alone, once you've managed to push everything away from you, then all there is left is love, because there's nothing outside of you. And since you cannot hate yourself, since you love yourself so much that and so afraid of anything that is not you that you've pushed it away from you, then there's only love. And the only way to have another experience is, of course, if you start fear, if you start to be afraid of yourself again, then you split and you have parts of you that you push on the outside, and then you can interact with them. Which is basically what happens when you are afraid of your dark side, afraid of who you are, all that humanity is, all of your hidden desires, all of your dark side. Then you experience them on the outside, of course, because since you fear them, you separate yourself from them, and then you can interact with them on the outside, as opposed to loving them and integrating them on the inside. And what that happens, what that is like, is simply you're out in the street and you have sometimes violent thoughts or impulses that you don't act upon, but you understand that they are a part of you. Just like you have, like in these old cartoons, you had Donald that had an angel sitting on his shoulder and a devil on the other shoulder. Well, they are part of Donald, and it's not because the devil says you should do this that you should obey. It's just that they're a part of Donald, and he does. You don't reject the devil. You just accept that it's a part of you, and you listen to it, and then you move on, and you don't have to necessarily act upon it. When you reject it and you put it on the outside, that's when you start seeing you're being mugged by a robber, or you're witnessing violence in the street, and you're like, oh my god, how can these humans do this? They are so terrible. Because when you say they, speaking about humanity as if you're not part of it, that is precisely what perpetuates the creation of those kind of scenes. Because all of instead of reintegrating that part of you that has also the potential for violence, you reject it, which means it escapes from you, like gravity. Basically, I reverse gravity, like a magnet that pushes energy away from you, and then you can actually witness it on the outside. And so that's sort of the theoretical framework for understanding that in the extremes, in extreme love or in extreme fear, there is no experience, and one is the other, which means once you find yourself in extreme fear, that's when you're actually in extreme love, because you're so alone, and there's nothing on the outside that is near you. You're like in a bubble of void, that there's only love for yourself that's left, and that transforms back into fear. So in order for an experience to start again, so the Big Bang, for instance, um, and then you have experience again. And what is asked of us today is to find the right balance between love and fear. And the only way that I can illustrate it at this point, and which is quite easy to understand, is if you look at the solution, basically, that planets, solar systems, galaxies, solar systems, and even atoms found, in order to sort of balance love and fear. And what they have found as a strategy is simply torque or spin. That is, by moving in a certain way, for instance, moving at a certain speed, you counter the effects of gravity or of these attraction repulsion, and they are in perfect balance, and that stabilizes kind of your existence, your continued existence. You can exist for billions of years. So atoms exist for billions of years, planets exist for billions of years, and the only reason they do is that they are not um, um, too attracted or too repulsed by one another. They found this kind of stability where between attraction and repulsion, where it sort of neutralizes. But there's still, it's not like they're rid of these forces. It's not like love and fear do not exist anymore. It's just that they're in balance. And they push then the hot potato of finding of a new sort of founding a higher, even a higher or more complex balance between love and fear, to another higher level. For instance, the world of biology, um, where animals eat each other, and plants, and humans, and we create chaos and all that stuff. You can imagine that our experience here on Earth and duality is the same as the early universes, where galaxies were sort of um, spinning into each other, and suns were colliding and exploding, and planets were colliding and exploding, and everything was kind of a big chaos, basically. And at some point, they found um, that balance, or atoms, for instance, being in a sort of an unstable state, where they would crash into each other and set off a nuclear reaction, which would split the parts inside, and they would go all over the place. And then gradually that stabilizes. And the reason why it has to push the hot potato upwards is that in a neutral, balanced state, um, it's also kind of a circular story or predictable story. So once you've found your harmony, then it's the past to future kind of mechanism, which goes infinitely fast. Like once you've found the rules that apply to you to interact in a harmonious way, there's no reason for time to be slow, because you sort of know what's going to happen. You sort of know the outcome because all the rules are settled. Whereas when you're still in imbalance, you still don't know how to mix those attraction repulsion energies, then then time still kind of exists because you don't know fully how you should interact, and then you're still like, time or experience still exists. So the only way for time and experience to continue to exist is to push the imbalance onto a higher level, which in the case of planets and atoms and that stuff is to push it on biology. And even biology, actually, I would say that those rules are pretty much settled, because you see with the dinosaurs and everything, they sort of found their balance. They knew how things were going. There was this kind of circle, um, the circle of life, like in the Lion King, where the dinosaurs eat each other, then they die, their bodies decompose, they become the grass, then they eat the grass, blah blah blah. So there is this harmony is kind of found. The rules are found. So what do you need? You need to create humans to stir some more chaos into the whole soup, because they don't know how to balance love and fear. And they will have to find a mix between those two energies, which is yet even more complex, and which is what we have called democracy, laws, justice. All of those things are about finding the balance between those things and neutralizing them and allowing for something greater to take over. So let's imagine that that would be the being, the collective, the being that is the sum total of all of us, that we are one cell in the body of a sort of a being that's humanity. You can imagine that the moment where we sort of find the rules to interact in a harmonious way, that is when this being sort of opens its eyes and creates a world on the outside via its first fear, its first thought, or its first fear. And then us in the inside live that thought as an adventure, but no longer as kind of, because we will be fully aware of all of this. We won't be thinking that we're a victim of that being, but rather sharing in on the beautiful and thrilling adventure of that being, just like our cells are having a tremendous adventure being a part of our bodies every time we go for a walk, every time we go to work, because it's just so much more interesting than swimming around in the ocean and eating one another. Um, so again, fear is not, and ego is not bad. It's just that it has to be placed in the right context within the right mix. So, for instance, to love yourself and fear death is just a way to make sure that you don't dissolve in into the collective. Like the example I gave is like an ice cube would melt in water. Imagine if you'd completely lose the fear of death and you completely lose your ego, then there would be no reason for you to believe that you, as an individual, stop the boundaries that are you, are that of your skin, for instance, because you'd love the air around you as much as you love yourself, which means your consciousness would start expanding beyond your body, way beyond your body, and then you'd see no problem in stopping to eat, or you would see no problem in a stone crushing you or something, because you are also that stone. You're also that stone. So why would you care? And so that's the moment basically where you die. But there is still a way to balance these two forces for harmony, which is really, really important. That is, to me, the key word here: harmony. A way to mix those two to make sure that the ego is reassured that it's not going to die, and but you still love yourself more than the outside, so to speak, so you don't dissolve into nothingness. Um, and yet your interactions with the outside are not that of struggle and strife and violence and all these negative things. So I hope this one was interesting to sort of expand on this these two primal energies of love and fear, or feelings, how how they work, how we're supposed to deal with them, trying to find this way of neutralizing them. And the neutralization of them is ascension, basically, because neutralization, you could say that this is integration, actually. It's the same as the process of integration. Integration, that is understanding fully who you are, and that allows you to develop the right kind of strategy rather than struggling one with the other and colliding one into another. Um, Integration and then transcendence, of course. Once you've integrated what you are to the fullest, transcendence is available to you. Um, which in the case of atoms, for instance, is creating the molecule. The molecule is its transcendence, because it allows for new, more complex interactions between atoms, but atoms sort of survive the integration and disintegration of molecules. That is, molecules, they react with one another, oxygen transforms into something else, and then is consumed, and then, for instance, you inhale it, it becomes CO2. But the actual individual atoms survive that process. They're no longer like their atom is not split, their core is not split, their electrons are not split. They just change states smoothly. And the same would apply to us inside the body of humanity. Like if it wants to have an adventure where it is in a war with other galactic beings, then we probably experience that as a kind of a video game, like we have fun, and then when so we're fully immersed in it and we play that. But then once humanity sort of has different experience, then it's like taking your VR glasses off, and then, well, it's over. Let's play another game. Let's do something else now. Where and no longer something that is really perceived as negative or frightening or whatever. Um, so I think that's the kind of world that awaits us. That is the real ascension, and the real 5D. So I hope this was interesting. If you have any questions, feel free to ask, and talk to you in the next video.